thought you'd have called me, baby, just to see you'd be late again. I thought you would care about me, said you were my best friend. Maybe you think I can't live without you. Maybe that's why you treat me so wrong. I'm not obligated to you. I don't want it this way. Don't be staring through those brown eyes. You must have seen that this was coming. When I tried to talk to you, you turned away. You say you wanna dance. You don't ever want to argue. You wanna love the night away. Girl, I won't stay. You say you wanna dance. You don't wanna talk it over. You wanna love the night away. Girl, I won't stay.
Oh, yes, people. Pleasant good night to all and sundry. I feel musically inclined.
All this time you've been
And
playing with my mind. Now you're running out
endowed
of time.
and embedded in me
Means nothing to you. Maybe
is
you
the
see through the
notion,
part in me.
the
Maybe all
perception,
that you're thinking is
the vision
wrong. Baby, my love ain't so
that change will come sooner than we think.
You must have seen that
And whether it comes sooner than we think, we know that change is inevitable. The Rowley administration is a lame duck administration. Shame to lie down. And therefore, it's days and numbered. And we must accept that as a pellucid, unadulterated, immutable fact. It cannot change. Let us not waste time. And therefore, in those circumstances, they could say what they want. Those who believe somehow that there is something mystique, something that is enigmatic about the Rowley administration, or that they have some kind of celestial, providential, and clearly some kind of ability to stay in office, and in spite of their iniquities, evil, and wickedness, they can somehow deliver evil, deliver wickedness, deliver pain, ache, agony, and stress, and distress, and oppression, and remain in office. I say to you who believe in that nonsense, then it means that therefore you are yet to conceive the idea that evil could never prevail over good. And Rowley and they are evil. Yes, indeed. And therefore, we have to soothe the mind and continue to convince ourselves that the more love we give to each other and the more commonality we have of purpose with a common enemy that is, of course, Rowley and they, then all you have to do is to send me the pillow that you dream on, because all of us are dreaming the same dream, to get rid of the Rowley administration. Let's hear them.
Don't you know that I still care for you?
All of us.
Send me the pillow that you dream.
And let me tell you, the care that we are talking about is care, love, and devotion to Trinidad and Tobago, our constitution, the rule of law, and the fact that no one must escape the wrath of the criminal justice system and the civil justice system, especially those who have done what the Rowley government has done, the entire cabinet conspiring, of course, to deceive, to displace, and to rob us, and to pillage, and to sacrifice all of us for their personal aggrandizement and advancement. We say no. We say no. Tobago, we care for you, and you don't have to send the pillow we have the pillow that you dream on, because all of us are dreaming.
dream on it too.
This is, of course, the Corridor Transformation. Your host, Lennox Smith, on this Monday night edition. And I tell you, we have a bumper program for you tonight. Welcome. Welcome.
Take me in your arms and make love to me.
I was a fool for you, a fool for you. I was a fool for you, I was a fool for you. I thought you'd have called me, baby, just to see you be late again. I thought you would care about me, said you were my best friend. Maybe you think I can't live without you. Maybe that's why you treat me so wrong. I'm not obligated to you. I don't want it this way. Don't be staring through those brown eyes. You must have seen that this was coming. When I tried to talk to you, you turned away. You say you wanna dance. You don't ever want to argue. You wanna love the night away. Girl, I won't stay. You say you wanna dance. You don't wanna talk it over. You wanna love the night away. Girl, I won't stay. It's not that I don't really love you. Girl, I just don't love your style. All this time you've been playing with my mind. Now you're running out of time. Maybe my love means nothing to you. Maybe you've seen through the heart in me. Maybe all that you're thinking is wrong. Maybe my love ain't so strong. Don't be staring through those brown eyes. You must have seen that this was coming. 'Cause when I tried to talk to you, you turned away. You say you wanna dance. You don't ever want to argue. You wanna love the night away. But girl, I won't stay. You say
That is the love we must have for Trinidad and Tobago. All of us
wanna talk it over. You wanna love
on Thursday.
girl, I won't stay.
On Thursday, all of us will assemble on the Grand Lara Promenade opposite Express to show solidarity, support, sympathy, empathy, and of course to send a message to this administration. No longer will the population tolerate their infiltration into independent institutions, and in this case, of course, the victim is the holder of the office of the Auditor General. And we say that rambunctious, that's evil, that's reckless, that's brutal, that's savage, and that, of course, obsolete conduct in a civilized society must be relegated to the dustbin, not just of history, but to take Rowley and all of them and make them as well history in this country. Democracy is about what? Government by the people, of the people, and for the people. And that is what we must, of course, convince ourselves of. And Trinidad and Tobago must not be subjected to such barbaric conduct. We love Trinidad and Tobago too much. Oh, yes, indeed. None of us want to be a fool for anybody, particularly, of course, the Rowley administration people. So a pleasant, once again, good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are streaming on the World Wide Web, present a good night to you. Yes, I thought I should start with a little different flavor and of course to give you a little pep in your stride, so to speak, and to of course make your contribution as you normally would do. But let us go straight, of course, to the issues of the day. I have something downloading in the background in the meantime to of course reinforce what I want to talk about tonight. But I thought it was important, of course, to look at the antecedent and the historical background to this savage and should I say unprovoked attack on the Auditor General of this country, who has a responsibility independently to, of course, monitor, manage, and report on the accounts of the country. And the likes of Rowley, as we saw, of course, with respect to his infiltration into, of course, the Police Service Commission, and, of course, for the first time, a president having, of course, to backpedal, having, of course, to defend herself in the office that she holds, because, of course, of the Rowley administration and Rowley himself trying, of course, to not want a particular person to be commissioner of police, was prepared, of course, to not just infiltrate, but undermine and subvert. And that, to me, is a classic case, is the quintessential case of misbehavior in public office, at minimum, if not treason. If not treason, people, treason, the highest, of course, sin that any citizen could commit against his or her country. And I accuse Rowley and his cabinet of treason. And there are, of course, other episodes and examples to, of course, ratify and confirm that. But let's deal with, of course, the Auditor General. You see, on Thursday, all of us must, of course, lock horns, lock arms in unison and say that our democracy has been under threat for some time, but this rampaging, ugly son of a gun, a fellow who, of course, has a natural bald head and would like to make us believe that is the kind of delusionary individual he is, to make us believe it is artificial. No. He fails to want to wear it like how, well, I will use Alan Roberts, but of course, the more classic example are, of course, Wade Mark and Gopi Singh. They wear the bald head because it is natural to them. But Rowley, because he doesn't like to see when he has, of course, this head of hair from his occipital region, the back to both sides of his temporal region of his cranium. He then, of course, tried to make it look artificial. I can imagine how he scrapes that every morning to, of course, because once he leaves it to grow, he and all will have to say, he has a face that only a mother would love. And may well want to, of course, to deny it and say, nah, I couldn't make such a... Let me go to what I want to talk about before I get vexed tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, this latest attack by this Rowley PNM against the Auditor General is just a continuation and perhaps an extension of a pattern of behavior by this government to undermine, infiltrate, and control our independent institutions. The framers of our Constitution established...
I want to tell you that it's not Lennox Smith alone has been saying that. Better late than never, if only recently. There are others who are saying that. That is Dave Tanko, of course, the representative for one of the UNC held constituencies. I think he's also he's not the chairman of the party, but certainly holds a high-ranking position in the UNC. But the point I want to make is that we have been saying that from time immemorial. We have been saying since we saw the conduct of Dr. Rowley that he is a power mongerer. And as you know, and we have said, and demonstrated, of course, almost on a daily basis by this government, power intoxicates and makes men giddy. and Rowley and them are drunk. It is also said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Rowley believed that he is some kind of absolute dictator. He is some kind of absolute monarch, and that he could take and do what he wants in spite of the checks and balances that have been wove into the Constitution to emasculate the executive. And I want to tell you this from a historical perspective. We must give Capildio. Let me repeat, we must give Capildio. Because when they went to Marlborough House to inaugurate the first Independence Day, or should I say, to sign the documents with respect to negotiating and concluding independence for Trinidad and Tobago, it was Capildio, representing the opposition, that insisted that these independent institutions be enshrined and be sacred. They must be what? Sacrosanct is the Latin expression. Sacrosanct. They must be sacred. Cannot be touched. And yet still, by 21st century Trinidad and Tobago, we have a despotic individual who is prepared to stretch the envelope. It is called, of course, the ability to stretch and to generate ad nauseum actions that were never contemplated. Never contemplated. And Rowley, in just 9 years so far, has scuttled and has overturned and has disrespected and has sacrileged those very sacred and hallowed principles. Principles of checks and balances. And we must, of course, acknowledge that as a fact. There are those who would bury their heads in the sand like the ostrich, or are in almost perpetual denial. Well, we know that the devil has its followers as well. So once Rowley can provide them with 30 pieces of silver, these Judases, they are prepared, of course, to betray the 1 point something million of us, minus those what I consider to be non-patriotic or unpatriotic, and are prepared, of course, for selfish reasons to sacrifice their own integrity, the integrity of those institutions that Capildio was insistent should be enshrined into the Constitution. And if we were not as vigilant as we are, Rowley and they would have ride roughshod and, of course, dismiss and render null and void and of no effect these institutions. It's a good thing that they are on the statute books and therefore enshrined in our Constitution, and we can, of course, reference them and say to Rowley and they that you have infringed, that you have, of course, conducted yourself unpatriotic, and that your conspirators' unpatriotic behavior is nestled, of course, in what one can conclude in such circumstance as treason. And Rowley talk about vex before I tell you what Rowley said about people who are engaged in such conduct, because he said in olden days, Rowley said in olden days, if people conduct themselves in the way he's conducting himself, they send you, of course, to the gallows. They behead you, in other words. Yes, he said that. In olden days, people who, of course, betray their country in the way that he has been doing, they send them to the guillotine to be beheaded. Yes, Rowley said, and don't get me vexed before I prove it, you know. So that is the beast that we are dealing with. Total hypocrites. And of course, do as I say, but don't do as I do. Situational ethics. People, of course, you can call now. I will not put any constraints on your calls. 337-6940, 337-6940. We are up, of course, on YouTube and, of course, Facebook. Of course, on Facebook, you have to type in love and or Laventil, love Laventil, and you will get me there on Facebook. We are yet to pull down that page, as I said, that has been hacked, but we ain't bothering with that. They could try as they may, but they can't keep a good man down, neither a good thing down. And as we always say, evil could never prevail over good. So I am not perturbed, nor must you be. And even, of course, if you believe that somehow the corridor transformation will be in jeopardy. No, just 2 weeks ago, we were, of course, struggling to have good videos, whilst our audios were all right and acceptable. Today, we have both audio and video for clarity, 1, and for quality, 2, and for proper assimilation, whether you are viewing live or you want to, of course, have it for posterity or view these programs later. They are there in full quality. Full quality, and that is as a consequence of the sacrifice and the commitment and the dedication. Nobody else has been able to do that on a daily basis, except, of course, on a Friday. None in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is nothing new to me, because I was the one who, of course, caused the Laventil Technology and Continuing Education Center to be in existence today. It's I who invented, of course, the MLIO, the Mobile Laventil Improvement Awards. And right now, on George Street, we have, of course, the development of the MLS Empowerment and Empowerment Resources Center to be rolled out. And we have already, of course, signed an arrangement with those young people who Rowley and them say they have abandoned and somehow have a love for them now that the election is coming around, by saying that he's going to find $100 million, elusive as that too is. But of course, part and parcel of the attempt to placate and to what I consider to be unmeritoriously and, of course, enigmatically, and at the same time, stupidly attempting, of course, to quell the unfolding criminal behavior, murders after murders, maiming after maiming, shootings after shootings, gang hostility after gang hostility, and these whole asses, Rowley included, trying to tell us that they have been using our money to the best and the best that could be produced for the best that could be produced, and the best that has been or is being produced is the worst thing that anybody have ever seen, contemplated, or could ever comprehend. We must compare that with between 2010 and 2015, and know that, of course, Rowley and they are giving us poison and telling us that it is a powder puff, an egg, fried, and of course boiled. He's telling us that the evil that has been the idiosyncratic disposition of the PNM at this point in time, mismanaged and failure of the economy, failure in crime and criminal behavior, failure in our health system, failure in agriculture, failure in tourism, failure in even the office of the Attorney General, failure in social delivery and development. We have been hearing too much harrowing experiences where people have applied for their pension and depending on some, of course, have non-communicable diseases, or put another way, life conduct diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, Yes, and some of whom would have had a stroke or two, but recuperating. Yes, lifestyle diseases. They're not communicable. You can't catch it if you blow your nose. But because of your lifestyle, maybe you are eating the wrong food and other non probably conduct that would have put the body under stress, possibly lack of exercise, etc., all of that. But the fact of the matter is that the Ministry of Social Development and in collaboration with the Ministry of Health are supposed to, of course, address those problems because these people are members of the society. Rowley and them don't see it so. So that and all has failed. The Ministry of Sports has failed. Yes, the Ministry of Sports has failed. The Ministry of Youth has failed. This fella, Cummins, you don't know if he coming or he going, but he named Cummins. And mind you, when he mentions about a project, is a 200 training and only 40 could get the optimum, or about 6 of them, or 60 of them as the case may be. I alone in MLIO was training over 200-300 on my own without government resource. You have government resource and you're training 60 persons and 200 persons. In a situation, people, and don't let nobody fool you, the facts are there. And you know, in July coming, is the minimum of 13,000 young people leaving school permanently, secondary school, for the terminating their, of course, their secondary school life. Many of whom, or the most of whom, will not be going back to school, meaning that they will not be going on to advanced level or going back to take another bite at a CXC. But that is not all. That is futuristic. But what about the 13 or so thousand that left school last July? And the July before? And the July before that July? And the July before? In other words, the July is from 2015 to now. And where are the jobs? Where are the opportunities? Where are the admiration and consideration? Even, of course, the budgetary allocation for on-the-job training has been reduced. Whilst, of course, the number of persons leaving school and have nowhere to go, and the devil will always find work for idle hands. It's real. It's real. And thus you will understand why we have, of course, such heinous, wicked, diabolical home invasions. And when they didn't get anything, they set people on fire, or they set the home on fire, or they kill for killing's sake as they go into communities and just spray because they have the guns and they have the bullets and they have the mindset that is, of course, evil. And mind you, that is at one level. I want to tell you, of course, that at the government level, Rowley and they are equally culpable and wicked and evil because they are, in a larcenous manner, a bunch of kleptocrats, thieves, that utilizing our money. What the hell you're doing with all these libraries that you're constructing? What the hell you're doing with all of these community centers? I see one, of course, going up in Trin City. Just imagine that. What Trin City people want to with a community center? Everybody's home has all the accommodation that they could muster. Better than that of probably most of the community centers that are in, of course, less developed communities. But they're putting one up there. It's just a thief. Community centers all over the place. And then the most ludicrous, the most asinine, the most dotish, the most, not just misrepresentation, but abuse of the treasury, of the country, of our resources, our financial resources. They're constructing people libraries. What you're constructing libraries for? And your library could be in your smartphone. Any book you need, you could consult your smartphone. The money that is being allocated for those, what I consider to be profligate projects, and Rowley's, of course, ego, like, of course, the Magnificent Seven repair and the president's house, when, of course, you could easily, with that money, provide 24/7 internet connection across Trinidad and Tobago for the thousands of devices that people on their own volition, and it has become, of course, normative and a cultural pastime to acquire at least a smartphone. If you put internet, because most likely the people will not be able to afford or have not been able to afford internet connection on a consistent basis. But if you do that with the money, it means therefore you save. You save for yourself the so-called devices that you want, of course, to install in schools. And you shamelessly, I should say, but shamefully as well, you're talking now about, of course, laptops and tablets for school children, but you don't want to say from first form, you don't want to say that Kamala Prasad Bisesa was again right. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do it. But you will pay the price. I can assure you of that. God don't sleep. And evil cannot prevail over good. Let's go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Calling from San Fernando.
Go ahead, San Fernando.
I think I've said it already on this program, you know.
Go ahead.
That the government, this present regime, is their priorities are all scaled all over.
Yes, I recall that very distinctly, yes.
Yes. And they are not ready to take care of all the young people that is around. Right? So, you know, even in terms of the health situation, everything, the whole thing in Trinidad is just, and day by day it just getting a little more scarier every day and day.
And you're right. You're saying it like if you're pulling up your handbrakes while you're talking. No, let it go. It's a fact.
And thousands we seeing it daily. Thousands of people are unemployed and they seem not to be able to put a hands down on this because they are they're just stealing all the money and, you know, nothing is really happening. And as I said before also, Marbella is also an area where Petrotrin, that closing down of Petrotrin, Marbella looking like a ghost town. I was coming from Port of Spain nearly on the water taxi. And when you look across at Petrotrin, it's looking very dismal.
Yes.
And that picture is nice. That picture is nice. Anyway, you walk in, even in San Fernando here, look at the General Hospital in San Fernando.
Yes.
I mean, I want to give it, to do something for you. You know, I want to give you some pictures and show you exactly what goes on in San Fernando.
Yes. I will appreciate that, man. Send them. We need to highlight these realities.
Thursday you're having this on
March.
on the
Yes, we are delivering a letter to the office of the Auditor General in support of her. And against, of course, what I consider the brutal attack of her independent office. We are assembling, of course, on Banara Promenade outside Express House, so that's very easy. And then we walk westwards to the Tower C at the waterfront to, of course, deliver that letter to her office.
So what time that's at? 10 o'clock?
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. We're trying to get everybody to be there.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. I think I'll try and bring up some of those pictures for you one time.
I appreciate that, man. I will be there in the forefront of the action.
because that even with that auditor general issue, that's
Yes.
a very threatening issue to Trinidad and Tobago. No,
Of
people
course.
don't understand it. You know. Yeah,
Internationally as well. Internationally,
yeah,
we are blacklisted as a consequence of that kind of
be-
rambunctious, brutal, belligerent
because
attack
yeah,
by this
because
government on an independent institution that has to deal with our money.
yeah, because any fool will know, right? That once you have a company or anything so running, your books must be,
Yes, yes. In
must be
order,
saying the right
it must
figures in
it
order.
must represent and reflect that the activities as far as expenditure and as well
And
as income is concerned.
yeah, and if you're not doing that properly, crap smoke your pipe,
Of
if they come
course,
down
you're
on
talking about
you,
international rating
yeah,
agencies. You're talking about multilateral lending agencies, whether it be IMF, whether it be World Bank, and other institutions that may be multilateral in nature, but not, of course, official as those others. You're talking about serious collapse of the
of the government.
integrity of the country.
Yes, yeah. That's a serious, serious thing. And
Yes.
we ought to be taking this thing very seriously. And apparently, some people are not, and some people are not still aware of it.
Yeah,
But
but we cannot,
and and
those
some
of
of
us who
those,
are conscious, I always believe, I prefer to see the glass, or to say that the glass is half full than to see it half empty. I believe in
um,
optimism. Yes.
somebody was telling me something over the weekend here.
Go ahead.
That Imbert on Friday, what he went silent in the house.
Yes, he went silent. I have that, but I'll bring it tomorrow. I have it,
That
editing right now. But
he
yes,
he was
silent.
cornered. He was
No,
cornered. You see, that it's cornered. He gets cornered. You understand? So, when they asked him, I think something like, "Are you all right, Mr. Imbert?" And he was just very quiet.
yeah, that's
You know?
because he was conjuring up something more sinister than being quiet. We will discuss that tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Yeah, thank you as well, my friend, for calling. Yes, indeed. People, of course, we share your comments as well. But let's go back to Dave Tanku and, of course, his assessment. I pause just to make the point that we have been saying that from time immemorial. Here it is, of course, persons who are part of the officialdom, part of the governance or the government structure in the country, are now recognizing what we have been saying from time immemorial. I suppose there are those who have more vision than others. All of us are not born with the same, let's say, perceptive acumen. Some are more perceptive than others, even though, of course, we may be blessed with the same, what I consider to be physiology. But let's go straight, of course, to Dave Tanko and hear what he has to say with respect, of course, to the latest iniquity and the latest offense by this government against the people of Trinidad and Tobago in public office, and therefore it is, of course, not just an abuse of office, but it is an offense against the people of Trinidad and Tobago for so conducting yourself in a public office. But let's go to the line. It looks as though I have to go to the line before. President, good night. Welcome. President, good night. Welcome. President, good night. Welcome. President, good night. Yes, you are live. Welcome on the corridor transformation. Going once, going twice.
Good night.
Oh, right. Good night.
Good
Yes,
night, Lennox.
I almost count you out, but you got
I
saved by the
know.
bell. Yes, go ahead.
I was waiting for you to turn on Dave Tanku to talk. Dave
Yes,
Tanku makes a lot of sense. Dave Tanku is going to tell us the same thing about corruption, thieving. They can't find the billions of dollars. And right now, Imbert and all his staff, they're scrambling to find out where can they get this money, where can they find this money. They did find that money, they found it, but now they have to get the documentation, and that is where the problem lies. And he has to lay the papers in Parliament. That's his job. Anyway, and he has a timeline when he should submit it. He can't say he's submitting it 20 years from now. But it's his choice to put it in Parliament. I think he could say no. He could say, I'm not putting this, it's unacceptable. That's his, I think that's part of his job too, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look that up in the law books. Anyway,
Well, of
so
course,
you're doing this.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because on the last occasion you said that it was only, if I interpreted what you said right, it was only Imbert could have presented it in the
But
parliament,
who else?
and I
Yeah,
agree
who
with
else
that.
can present it?
No,
The
no, no, no.
president?
I want to say I agree with that. I agree with that, but I got the impression that
Okay.
a copy was not being sent to anybody else, and I thought that how a
No, it can't
politician
be.
alone,
It's not.
yeah.
It's not made
But of
public.
course, the
It's not
president, uh, yeah,
after it's presented to Parliament and it's accepted by Parliament. The Auditor General has the discretion, and that's a wide discretion, to make it public. And he or she can write notes and describe every part of the budget and in summary, so our public who are poor and uneducated and not well versed in the language of that they're using for Parliament, they can understand this budget. And that's her job. She should do that for the people because we are all waiting to see how this government spend the money, especially money that they got, as especially money that they received. Where how did they spend it? We need to know.
yeah.
And you'll see most of it
But
goes on salary. Most of it.
I want to tell you, we have to be clear here. That is not the norm. The norm. The norm is
No.
that the Minister of Finance, whosoever he may be, it happened to be Imbert this time, presents the document that is the report of the Auditor General in the Parliament. It now becomes a public record because it is noted. Anybody in Trinidad and
Oh
Tobago
yeah,
can now
you're right. You're
access.
right.
Just
You're
now,
right.
I finish
But
it. But I'm saying
I
that it is a beautiful suggestion for the Auditor General, having regard to the controversial situation that this particular report has evolved into, that she probably go
uh-huh.
on some, I shouldn't say public relations, but some education program to, of course, edify the population as to some of her
Yeah.
findings and how her office works. That is the point I
Okay.
want to make. All right.
I want to switch to talk quickly, and I won't stay long on the phone. My battery is gonna die soon. I
All
forgot to
right.
charge my phone last night, and I left my charger in my car.
Yeah, but you
All
know
right.
you're coming down the corridor. You know you're going to spend some time, so you have to be
I
prepared.
know.
You you, you come like
But
the.
I want to say something.
You go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
want to say something. I want to say something about the Brian Lara Stadium. You know, the Brian Lara Cricket Stadium. Is that where you guys are having it? The
Yes,
match?
the T20. Yes, yes, tournament.
Yes, the
The yesterday's
T20. Yeah,
ILP. Yeah.
and you know that this year, from June 1st to June 29th, international cricket players were coming to Trinidad. We're hosting it. It went to Parliament and it was approved. And the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, they are going to be hosting all of the fixtures. They're going to be putting all the fixtures for the tournament.
Yeah.
Now, in Parliament, I remember reading notes and they were talking about this and they were wondering which vendors should come into the stadium to sell and vendors who could be outside the stadium selling. So for anybody, I think this is a good opportunity for vendors who have fast food or you're doing something interesting, bring it to the stadium and sell it to the people who are coming because people will be coming from all over the world. Is that true?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Of
And
course, it's been hosted between the West
that
Indies and the
hotel,
United States. Yeah.
yeah, that's why that hotel was what did the guy saying? He said $1.2 million. He spent the bill a hotel with 19 rooms and 19 bathrooms or something like that. And it was only 1.4 million, and he got the money. And he never described where he got it from, but he got the
well,
money and he built
well,
this.
well, well.
And
Nice
that's
joke. Nice joke. Look how much beds in the Cuba Hospital and only 4 patients.
yeah, you know, and we're watching how this is going to play out. Let's see which vendors are going to be at the Brian Lara Stadium selling what. Because the government needs now to make an announcement and tell the public, especially poor people who have something to sell, which is something tangible. Maybe they could get an opportunity to go to Brian Lara and sell their product. I think that's what we want. We want to showcase what our people do and what they have to offer. Not go there and all they're getting is fried chicken and have French fries, which is good, a hot dog. But if you are getting that, bring the poorer vendors, not the big, the big ones in there.
Yes.
That's what my. So you're going to you're going to the right stadium for this match, and remember, it's a very valuable station. And I don't know where Brian Lara Cricket Academy is getting all this money from, because they seem to be very well off. Of course, the PNM probably funding them, so and that's a good one.
I have some comments to make, but we'll wait until you are completed.
Yes, and I'll let you go so we can play Dave Thank You now. Thank you, Lennox, for giving
Yes.
me time on the air.
Yes,
All
indeed.
right.
Thank you very much. I want to say this categorically. There is always something sinister about a decision by this government, and they never fail in a very loose and profligate and devoid of the public's interests. They always act. You know why they want to host those tournaments at the Brian Lara Stadium? Anything could beat historically ambience, strategic location of the Queen's Park Oval. They are prepared to take the monies, our money, and bribe the organizers to host this at a stadium that they constructed to give the impression that somehow it is the premier institution for cricket in Trinidad and Tobago. Could never be. And only because they have their nasty, dirty, stinking hands up to the cookie jar of the country's vault, the country's purse, that they are doing that. Brian Lara Stadium could never accommodate as much people as that of the Queen's Park Oval. Brian Lara Stadium could never have as much history as the Queen's Park Oval. Only because Rowley and they want us to believe that the Brian Lara Stadium is superior, supreme, and because they say so, it is so, when in fact it is the opposite. Don't take these fellas and them seriously. You watch at that stadium and watch at the Queen's Park Oval and tell me where would you prefer, of course, to have a tournament. Port of Spain already has all the hotels in close proximity. It has all the infrastructure. It has a mass of population. To simply say that you want to cry it up there because South should get something too, it could get something too, yes, but not to sacrifice the Queen's Park Oval that has history, rich history, location, ambience, and all of the other historical and cricketing sensationalism that we have grown up on and have gone to see and witness and read about the Queen's Park Oval. Well, they are just wicked. And that is only to make he and his government look good, because it's a stadium that started with about $200 million, and then it morphed into $1 billion, and then he said he finished it for an additional 90 million, sorry. So it cost $1 billion and 90 million to complete. And we must not see that is a level of profligacy, nothing different to those community centers that they're building all over the place. Cash cow, slush fund. Yeah, slush fund for electioning purposes and to probably complete Balize House. They don't want, of course, the Queen's Park's Oval authorities or the management there to know or to receive anything. They could control Brian Lara totally in the hands of the government and the Ministry of Sports, and therefore they can siphon as they like. Nothing sincere, people. Do not take Rowley and them seriously. It's always something. You cannot compare to the Queen's Park Oval. You cannot tell me that facility that is called Branara Academy Stadium, whatever it is superior to that of the Queen's Park Oval? You can't tell me that. So it's always something sinister. And they pay good money, just as how they paid during COVID, good money to have one of the tournaments kept down at that facility because they want to say that they built it and therefore they are promoting it, and it is in their elusive Mad Max mindedness superior to that of the Queen's Park Oval, and they're just laughing at them. Everybody just laughing at them. You don't have facilities to accommodate as much people as the Queen's Park Oval. There may be parking issues and so on. Well, there are plenty of land around there at the Branara that they could have parking. But that's about it. Quality, accommodation, etc. Queen's Park Oval, historically and otherwise. I thought I should introduce that as another sinister, another square peg in wrong hole argument by this government for something that clearly is unjustified. Unjustified. But enough of that. Let's get back, of course, to Dave Tanku.
Ladies and gentlemen, this latest attack by this Rowley PNM against the Auditor General is just a continuation and perhaps an extension of a pattern of behavior by this government to undermine, infiltrate, and control our independent institutions. The framers of our Constitution established several commissions designed to be independent in composition and function, free from overreach by the government in particular. Mere months into the beginning of the Rowley administration in the latter part of 2015, we saw the executive overreach, which was to become a hallmark of the PNM rule, with the wrongful dismissal of the central bank governor. And over the last 3 years in particular, what we have seen is an aggressive, sinister agenda of the government to undermine the integrity of independent office holders by public bullying, intimidation, and outright abuse. Institutions designed to ensure accountability and transparency, especially in the use of public funds and in the preservation of the rights of citizens, seem to be particularly targeted. The public is now very much aware of this PNM government's relentless attacks on institutions, such as the Office of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Integrity Commission, the Police Service Commission, and now the Auditor General. This must be condemned in the strongest possible manner. In the case of the DPP, this PNM has notoriously taken issue with the DPP's past and present. Coincidentally, when decisions of the DPP's office exonerated the PNM's political opponents. Further, the DPP's office has repeatedly complained of a chronic and acute staff shortage, inadequate and inappropriate accommodation, and significantly reduced funding by this government. May I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the office responsible for prosecuting alleged criminals, but the government's refusal to properly resource the DPP's office has effectively compromised the ability of the DPP in its critical role as prosecutor of criminal matters, effectively resulting in the denial of justice to many victims. Is that criminals are walking away scot-free, while victims have little faith in ever receiving justice. Indeed, it was revealed by the media that the government racked up a bill of more than $45 million, ladies and gentlemen, more than $45 million in rent on a building purportedly tailor-made for the DPP's office without even consulting the DPP's office itself. The building was determined by the DPP to be inappropriate for its use. $45 million of taxpayers' money simply vanished under the guise of providing money for the DPP's office. In the case of another constitutionally established independent body, the Integrity Commission, ladies and gentlemen, who, following a $58 million cut in its budget for fiscal 2024, that office initiated proceedings in the High Court to determine the Commission's entitlement within the meaning of the Act. In response to this, the Prime Minister appeared to have taken a personal issue, stating, and I quote from a Trinidad Express article dated January 5th, 2024, bearing the headline, Rowley under attack for Rowley under fire for IC attack. And I quote, I permit myself to posit that maybe the issue is far too many ill-advised and politically motivated investigations have been embarked upon by the Integrity Commission, and the more circumspect investigations need to be conducted in accordance with the letter and the spirit of the Act.
So, people, you will have seen that among the plethora of other infringements engaged in by Rowley, in particular as Prime Minister, we are hearing now others, such as, of course, his statements about the Integrity Commission and accusations that because he was being investigated not once for the INS Gate housing accommodation matter. Remember that? With his good friend Warner. Incidentally, only yesterday or day before, his good friend Warner, son, was part of a dragnet initiated by the police, a sting operation for persons illegally mining, quarrying up in the in the Wallafield area, running a quarry without license. I want to see how Rowley, he has this proclivity, this, what I consider to be overburdensome, a tendency that when it is his friends, suddenly they get benefits when, of course, the police put a hand on them. I want to see what will happen in this occasion. We saw that with the AV Gillen. When he said AV was his best friend, or one of his friends. I want to see what will happen here. And when it happens, you must conclude that as a member of the electorate and as a young person who may or may not have, of course, registered yourself by getting your ID card and therefore ensuring your franchise is secured to vote at maximum in 2025, at minimum this year, you will understand that that kind of conduct is unacceptable in any democracy, and that is the conduct of a dictator unfolding with a rapidity and a rapaciousness unprecedented and unacceptable. Let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Oh, welcome. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Well, yeah, I was going to tell you. See that Corey was a big deal. For me, it was. Because this Warner guy, I forget his name, Alto, Akito, something like that, Luto. That guy, father, is a Corey businessman. That kid grew up in the Corey industry. And he knows all the ins and outs of crookedness. Because I'll tell you, I would say 92% of the Corys are not licensed. And the Minister of Energy, which is the Minister of Finance, which is inbuilt, refuses to have people to look at those applications that those quarry owners submit. Because a lot of the quarry, the way they're digging up, it's in villages. When they're transporting it, it's through villages. And they're destroying communities. And that quarry I remember the people were showing the news, all the dust from the quarry. And they couldn't sleep, the children had asthma. There are consequences when these people perform illegalities. And I think that newspaper, The Guardian, did a story on it, and I think that really pushed the minister to say, hey, tell the police that they're doing something illegal, and the police went in. The police was protecting them. Remember? The police were
Yeah.
driving right there and ignored it.
Yeah. At one time,
So
yes.
yeah, so it's like, why now what? What's the big deal? Nothing's gonna happen to this guy. He's not gonna go to he's gonna walk. He's gonna walk and be free and find another quarry site. Or maybe next week he'll start quarrying in the same site again. He doesn't care about villages and children. None of them do. They just care about making money, like all the PNM people do. All politicians once they get into office. It's all about making money, not about building country. That's how it is in Trinidad. All right, except for the UNC, I hope they try to do something positive. I'm trying to give them a little push. All right, and Lennox, thank you so much again.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And of course, what that statement or that contribution did was confirm what I'm saying. That when you look, when you follow, and you see that it's another, what I consider to be favor for a friend, you must further indict yourself, commit yourself, those young people in particular, to go and get your ID cards, to vote out such despicable, biased, self-serving, egotistic, dogmatic behavior. Cannot take government, our money, our resources, all of us. You're given a blight, you're given an opportunity, abuse it in that way, and believe that you can spend another term inside of that office. No! Rowley and they must go, and go now, preferably. They are too forward, obnoxious, opportunistic, evil, wicked, and corrupt. Corrupt to the core. Corrupt to the core, people.
According to the Prime Minister then, the reduction in funding is linked to his perception. The reduction in funding to the Integrity Commission is linked to his perception that too many politically activated, politically directed investigations were being done. Why, ladies and gentlemen, does the Prime Minister feel the need to continuously make such public pronouncements that put on full display his bitterness and animosity towards these constitutionally selected, these constitutionally created and constitutionally protected bodies? To attack one's political opponents in his usually bullyish, venomous manner is one thing, but to openly dispense such a vitriol towards officers that he should be seeking to protect as Prime Minister and Head of State, officers that he should be seeking to protect, is both astonishing, reprehensible, and wrong. The entire country is aware, ladies and gentlemen, of the reports that the government's highest office holder intervened and interfered with the operations of the Police Service Commission after the submission of the recommendation for Commissioner of Police. And reportedly, because the Prime Minister didn't like the recommendation that the Police Service Commission was being made. I want to remind you too, Mr. Munilal Lalchan, then Chairman of the Office of Procurement Regulation, he spoke of billions being lost to corruption and state contracts. Needless to say, Mr. Munilal Lalchan, he too was eventually replaced. It is also now part of our public record that the entire Police Service Commission headed by Ms. Bissi Prasad was unceremoniously replaced after the Prime Minister seems to have lost confidence in them based on their recommendation. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are seeing a similar pattern continuing in the continued attack on the independent office of the Auditor General, one Ms. Jaiwanti Ramdas, again after the report was already submitted in keeping with the law, because a Prime Minister, a PNM Minister, aided and abetted by a bungling Attorney General, didn't like the comments and the contents of the report. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what all of this fiasco, all of this bacchanal with the Auditor General, all of this eventually boils down to. There's no substantial amount of information in the public domain.
So people, there you have it. There is more, but I thought I will pause here and, of course, bring an excerpt from the Parliament itself, and maybe get a feel of what Anil Roberts had to say when the matter reached, of course, the debate floor or in the chamber of the upper house, the house of, or should I say the chamber called, of course, the Senate.
Dealing with the 44 minutes and 35 seconds of the minister's contribution. So let's get going, because I have my time is short. He brought in politics, the Honourable Minister brought in. He brought in that the PNM does not want to control the Office of the Auditor General. And he spoke about untruths and truths. He spoke about documentation being available. He spoke about the process. He spoke about the 44 minutes and 35 seconds of the minister's contribution. So let's get going, because I have my time is short. He brought in politics, the Honourable Minister brought in. He brought in that the PNM does not want to control the Office of the Auditor General. He spoke about untruths and truths. He spoke about documentation being available. He spoke about the process. He spoke about dates and deadlines, January 31st, March 25th, April 24th.
Point of order, 46-1. This never happened. This is totally irrelevant.
Or maybe the honourable member does not recall what he said, but I sat here and I took copious notes of every word that came out of his mouth.
Much has been made outside of there, usual hysterical political allegations about attempts to bully and coerce people. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am here today as Minister of Finance, simply doing my statutory duty, utilizing the Exchequer and Audit Act to extend timelines that are cast in stone in legislation but can be extended by resolution to allow all parties involved, I dare say, to calm down a little bit and get...
So it's clear that who the gods wish to destroy, the first send them mad. Imbert can remember what he said, and there is a fundamental principle in debates. If you start or you introduce a particular point, the responder, your counterpart, has the right, of course, to comment on it, if inclusive of expanding on it. That's the principle of debating. Here it is. He stands up to say that under a particular standing order, that he did not say what Anil Roberts was, of course, categorizing and summarizing. And it turns out that he in fact said so. But of course, there are many ways to skin a goat. So whilst he might have gotten his way with the president in the Senate, he certainly doesn't get his way as far as public opinion is concerned through, of course, the corridor transformation and, of course, Robert's own, of course, social media platform or program.
Together and try and have a reasonable meeting of the minds and try and see if we could have some kind of collaborative and consultative process leading to a proper result, rather than this antagonistic and politically charged approach with the introduction of this, I dare say, poison pill, freedom law chambers. It's really interesting. It's really interesting and intriguing that the Auditor General would go to Anand Ramlogan for legal advice. And of course, you see the result. You see the result. Mr. President.
He got up earlier when Anil Roberts was speaking and he never said those things. Never said those things. The Bamsi aching and quaking. They're sitting on a powder keg that is of atomic degree and nature. They can't take, they see Anand Ramlogan as a menace, but his legal intellect and his prowess, they cannot compete. They could talk how much they want. They could wish how much they want. But they caused the woman to take Anand Ramlogan because the person who is supposed to defend her and give her advice, the Attorney General, went on the side of the man who is trying to make her a liar and who is trying, of course, to make her lie. I'm talking about the sitting Minister of Finance, Imsbert. So he gone there. So, of course, the battle has been drawn and the sides have been taken. So what she's left with, to find her own legal representation, and she did so through Freedom Chamber, headed by Anand Ramlogan, and he only talking about that right through because they know that the ass is grass. They know that they lost. And they know that they can't justify what they have done. And they know that the Auditor General is in the right. She did her work. She said that $700 million and counting cannot be accounted for because they have not been able to put together supportive documents. And that is how it is in your own business. If your auditor said that they can't find certain documents that you said the result of which purchase a particular item and the receipt cannot be found, what does the auditor do? They say that they can't find it, obviously, but they see the equipment. In case of this fella, Imbert and the government, you can't see the receipt and you can't see the equipment. You know what I say? I say you can't see the receipt and you can't see the equipment. That's what it boils down to. It's nearly $1 billion. How the hell you finding? You can't find the thing that it's supposed to have purchased, and you can't find the receipts to justify the purchase or to ratify the purchase. And it has to do on both sides of the account. It has to do with income, and it has to do with expenditure. Money going out and money coming in. Yeah, that is what is at stake. But he's trying to, Imbert is trying to look at a date and say, they impugn my integrity by saying that I tried to backdate. Just as how they try to make heavy weather of the discrepancy of a number. David Lee said that it was $400 million that they spent to upgrade or to maintain Train 1, that plant, that LNG plant that cannot and will not have gas to be operational. Does not and cannot and will not have gas to be operational. But he said, David Lee said it was 400. They turned around and said, no, it's 200. Are they making that the issue? When in fact the issue must be, why the hell you spend that kind of money for what? And then telling us by some kind of epiphany, some kind of incongruent and of course square peg and round hole argument that somehow because they spent that 200 million, they were able to get, of course, shares in Train 2 and Train 3. When it would have come anyway without, of course, the 200 million being spent. Somehow, these con men and con women, and yet still, we cannot assess, we are not allowed to assess where 200 million was spent on that particular mothballed facility. These men are criminals to the optimum. Let's hear his attempt again to try to, of course, hoodwink the population and with his theatrics and histrionics. We know them well. Nothing strange, just pretending and believing that somehow they're catching us and that we are fools. Well, the laugh is on them. Jackasses.
What's the screaming all about? What's the screaming all about? Mr. President, I wasn't born yesterday and I didn't come in town last. In a letter from the Auditor General, the letter I referred to in the statement, I was called upon to retract statements, otherwise action would be taken. And therefore, it would be foolish in the extreme for me to accede to Senator Mark's request, since clearly they are all acting in concert, because this is from Freedom Law Chambers. And since the Auditor General has decided to go to the legal advisor to the opposition for advice, we really don't know whether a special report will ever be submitted at all, or what it will contain.
I read, I can't substantiate it independently, that one of the issues that was raised by the Auditor General is that not all the supporting documents related to the reported revised revenue position have been supplied. Can you speak to that a bit, please? Thank you.
With respect to allegations about missing documents and so on, I really don't want to get into that. Because in the first place, as far as I am concerned, I have until the 23rd of May to lay the Auditor General's report in the other place and this place. And I do intend to do that. Because, you know, certain entities in Trinidad and Tobago love to twist, distort, misrepresent, misreport, embellish, editorialize, and just downright tell untruths with respect to what ministers say. In terms of what documents the Auditor General has received or not received, my investigations lead me to a place that I would not like to be, where officials on one side are saying we provided the documents, and officials on the other side are saying we did not provide the documents. And really, I don't want to dive deeply into that whirlpool of accusations and counter-accusations. And a statement was made in the other place which is completely inaccurate, but part of the campaign of misinformation. Because, you know, certain entities in Trinidad and Tobago love to twist, distort, misrepresent, misreport, embellish, editorialize, and just downright tell untruths with respect to what ministers say.
That was just part of what he said. And when I'm debating him on what he has said, they're jumping up and saying irrelevant. I'm just showing you all this to show the dishonesty, the disgusting attitude, and the surreptitious attempts to cover up the truth from you, the people. Because all the UNC can do is bring the facts to debate, but they're afraid to debate. You ever see a human being get interrupted so much? But don't get that. They can't rattle the dog and still get the information out there. But he talked about politics, he talked about Freedom Law Chambers, he talked about opposition linking with trying to cast aspersions on the Auditor General as if it was politics. He talked about documents, paperwork, lack thereof. He talked about all of that. And that's what I was debating. And every minute these mama pool coward PNM, 46, because they feel it's a game. But you all have to take the information and understand. We are in this position because the PNM is corrupt. They cannot account for your money. End of story. Get them out.
Dealing with the 44 minutes and 35 seconds of the minister's contribution. So let's get going, because I have
let's
my
go
time
up
is
to
short.
the time when he interrupted, of course, Alan Roberts on the particular
that
section
PNM does not want to
order.
control the office of the Auditor General. He spoke about untruths and truths. He spoke about documentation being available. He spoke about the process. He spoke about dates and deadlines, January 31st, March 25th, April 35th.
Point of order, 46-1. This never happened. This is totally irrelevant.
So people, of course, you saw it, you heard it, Imbert. All of what Alan Roberts spoke about is what, of course, Imbert said. But, of course, because they lie so much, they suffer from acute amnesia. Conveniently, of course, conveniently. Let's get back, of course, to Nanku's analysis of this situation. Because I think it is important to understand that we have a existential threat to Trinidad and Tobago, a group of individuals who will not relent and will continue, of course, to engage in dark activities, to hoodwink, to deceive, and to steal people, the resources of the country from right under our noses.
And a substantial amount of uncertainty of the facts of this matter. 2 days ago, the Minister of Finance, in his preferred way of providing communication so he can avoid answering questions, posted the following comment on X. This is the comment, ladies and gentlemen. It says, the last week has seen lopsided opinions, uninformed commentary, idle speculation, foolish statement, and sensationalist articles on a matter that is under investigation. Why is it so difficult for the investigation's outcome to be so difficult? This is your Minister of Finance, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again an attempt by this PNM Minister of Finance to shift attention away from his role and that of his Attorney General in this sordid attack on the independence of the Auditor General. Firstly, what investigation? What investigation is the Minister speaking about? Well, according to the Newsday of Saturday, May 4th, 2024, and the Minister's own admission, the only matter he is seeking to investigate was the Auditor General's assertion that the Treasury Ministry of Finance submitted a backdated, revised statement of accounts. For this minister, ladies and gentlemen, this is the big issue that he wanted the country to focus on.
You see why I told you, and I brought in, of course, the example of that train one. Same scenario. They have a propensity, they have a inclination, they have a predilection to believe that the people are stupid and that what they say, because they hold the office of Prime Minister and Minister, etc., that we must believe them, or we should believe them, or we ought to believe them. And when they say somebody else lie, even though they're telling us lies, and that there can be no, of course, the verification, ratification, or the veracity of what they're saying can easily be disputed, they continue, of course, along that line. They remind me, of course, of a toddler with, of course, a box of matches and with a full tank of gasoline next to them. They will always blow up themselves for porting. That is what is happening with these fellas. And they have such a propensity to lie and deceive and consistently feed the population with these pieces of nonsense. That they also remind me of another analogy. A child has a fixation, a toddler, to pull down off a table, could hardly reach, but pull down off a table a hot or boiling cup of water. And as mommy or daddy miss to be attentive, he or she goes and pull it down, and you know what the outcome is. That is Rowley, and they are sick. They are habitual. They are wicked and devious and must be got rid of. Young people, get it, your ID cards. The country you have to save is Trinidad and Tobago, and that is your own.
He completely disregarded every other issue raised by the Auditor General, because those pointed out to the multiple failures of the Ministry of Finance that he heads and he is responsible for. Ironically, despite Imbert's utterances 1 week ago about the need to investigate, and his boof that 1.4 million people should hold their hands, wait on the results of this independent investigation, there has been no public statement to date about the start of any such investigation, no public naming of investigators, no deadline for the investigation and report, and no clear statement of the terms and conditions of any such investigation. Why? Because in so doing, the minister is very likely to be commissioning the investigating of his own misconduct as Minister of Finance. Secondly, there is no evidence that the minister launched any independent investigation before he and his colleague, the Attorney General, engaged in the most reprehensible and vile abuse of parliamentary privilege in the House of Representatives and in the Senate to make serious allegations against the integrity of the Auditor General, Ms. Jayawanti Ramdas. I call on the Minister of Finance today to immediately tell this country the names of the investigators appointed, how they were selected in the first place, their terms of reference, and the cost to the taxpayer of this frivolous exercise. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to remind the population of the undisputed facts of this matter. And I want the population to pay very close attention, particularly to the numbers when we get there. The Auditor General received from the Treasury / Ministry of Finance the public accounts showing the full financial position of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2023 on January 31st, 2024. This is fully in keeping with sections 1162 and 1164 of the Constitution and section 24(1) of the Exchequer and Audit Act. Having received the various statements, the Auditor General began conducting the audit of the documents submitted. The undisputed role of the Auditor General is to conduct an independent audit of the public accounts and funds, that is revenue and expenditure, as submitted by the state, in this case the Ministry of Finance / Treasury, and she must do so in full compliance with international accounting standards. The objective, ladies and gentlemen, of the Auditor General's work is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from misstatements, whether due to fraud or error, and to submit a report with her findings to the Minister of Finance, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the President of the Senate. Thereafter, their role is to ensure that the report is laid in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. This exact sequence has transpired for decades without a single problem. The submissions to the Auditor General and the submission of a subsequent report has always been done on time for decades, until Imbert and Amo showed up on the compound. We advised, and this is all in the public domain, that 2 months after the legal deadline for the submissions had closed, the Ministry of Finance wrote to the Auditor General saying that they had discovered that they, Ministry of Finance, had made a massive error. They claimed to have received $3,379,777,908 more in revenue than they had calculated, and they wanted the accounts to reflect this multi-billion-dollar material difference. That is strike one, failure by Imbert's ministry. This is not a $5 bill that you forget in your pants pocket and discover it when next you wear the pants or when you are going to wash it. These are billions of taxpayers' dollars. Billions. In addition, this is a very specific figure. Up to the last $8 clearly received in revenue. How did they come up with this very specific figure? They claimed that this was revenue collected from VAT, individual income tax, and business levy. They claim further that this was largely a result of the challenges faced because of the introduction of the electronic check clearance system by the central bank. This is the only government that will increase the use of technology and make everything worse. This is the only government. But the story became even more complex and curiouser and curiouser. When in the very same memo in which a claim of a $3.4 billion more in revenue was made, and which they wanted the Auditor General to reflect on her accounts, they also submitted an amended statement of revenue telling the Auditor General that they had reconciled an amount of $2,589,130,761.72. Another very specific figure, including up to the 72 cents. What that means, our ladies and gentlemen, is that they were not able to reconcile, which is to justify, they could not find the documentation to support, $781,647,146.28. Strike two. Strike two. So you wrote to the Auditor General, you told her $3.4 billion. Then you come back and you say in the same memo that you could not account for $781+ million, ladies and gentlemen. When the Ministry of Finance says that it reconciled this $2.58 billion, it means that they had found the evidence, the supporting documents, the facts, the justifications that proves, according to international accounting standards, that this was in fact the revenue received. So how then were they referring to $3.4 billion in the first place if they could not provide evidence of this? Where did they get this figure from? In the sky? And then it gets even more curious, ladies and gentlemen. On April 5th, 2024, another memo from Imbert's ministry with another new figure. Now, they claim that they had reconciled.
Of course, we are, of course, looking at the entire chronology of this bizarre development, an exercise, of course, in incompetence, mismanagement, and criminal behavior, possibly by way of abandonment, by way of delinquency, by way of decadence, by way of not being truthful, and of course, most importantly, you have not told us where the money gone. Where the money gone? Where the money gone, Imbert? That is the issue, not what date some reconciliated matter came before or after a particular date. No, it is about the money. Where is it? 700 million still to be accounted for in terms of revenue. Where the money gone?
Another $1.2 million received from the Green Fund, which means that the missing revenue was now to the value of $780,499,791.27. Strike three. Now, the Minister of Finance and his Attorney General have tried to make this fiasco about the Auditor General. It is not. From what I have just described to you, ladies and gentlemen, it is about the multiple errors by the Ministry of Finance, headed by Colm Imbert, and the attempts to cover it up. The PNM tag team have sought to distract the population and insult the professionalism of a highly trained and experienced professional with Muvelang about newness of an Auditor General who has decades of professional audit experience and who leads a highly qualified and experienced, competent professional audit team. This same PNM tag team attacked the Auditor General's integrity for seeking clarification as to whether the documents submitted late were in fact valid, studiously trying to get the population to ignore, that is the Ministry of Finance, studiously trying to get the population to ignore the fact that according to the documents in the public domain now, the Auditor General did in fact review the ministry's submissions, their reconciled documents. In fact, according to the public documents, Ms. Ramdas clearly stated in her submission that she and her team of audit professionals were unable to get the appropriate audit evidence to justify the increased revenue that the government was asking her to write in her report. And today's Express tells the tale, ladies and gentlemen. Today's Express tells the tale. There is evidence that the Auditor General wrote directly to the Ministry of Finance seeking clarification, seeking the evidence to justify the claims that the Ministry of Finance wanted her to place on record in her report. I want to tell Imbert and Arbon, we don't operate so in this country. Independent institutions do not operate so. Pure accounting and transparency, this is not the methodology of operating. I want Imbert and Arbon to tell me where on earth they expect any first-year accounting students, much less an Auditor General, to put their signature to figures that they cannot verify. That, Mr. Imbert, is not accounting. It is simidimi. It is hocus pocus and does not in any shape, form, or fashion conform to the law or to international accounting standards to which the Auditor General must adhere. And the minister is very well aware of that. So when he proceeds along this line, he knows exactly what he is doing, ladies and gentlemen. I want to tell Imbert and Arbon that not because they do not have professional standards, should they assume that everybody else is like them. This country must never forget that this is the AG who has reported to have been named and shamed in an international court and removed from a case because of an untruth he allegedly told in a legal document. And that seems to have qualified him to be Attorney General in the PNM eyes. This too is in the public domain for years and has not been refuted properly. So they believe that because they have no problems in providing untruths to the population, that everybody else must do it.
Yeah,
this PNM cannot understand concept. These ministers of government paid by taxpayers' money cannot understand the concept of integrity. This country must also never forget that it was this Prime Minister who boasted that the PNM operates like a mafia, the Cosa Nostra, and they maintain a code of silence. And he said that, and if you dare to violate that code, his PNM will kill you politically. Do you now understand the attack on this Auditor General, ladies and gentlemen? Do you now understand why this government is attacking the Auditor General? She refused to make the secret change in the figures demanded of her. She refused to follow the PNM code of secrecy. She refused to break the rules and regulations which guides her professional conduct because she is a professional. And that is why they have attacked her. Connect the dots, ladies and gentlemen. Connect the dots. If the Auditor General had demanded information, as we just said, and if the Minister of Finance was able to write to the Auditor General complaining and claiming that a very specific $3.4 billion variance in his statement of revenue existed, and then claimed that they had reconciled $2.598 billion and then a few days after, they had reconciled $2.599 billion, including now 73 cents, they found a cent somewhere. Why is it that the auditors from the Auditor General's department could not get access to the relevant documents to conduct and reconcile the variance? And that's what these emails talk about. That is what these emails talk about. Because the Auditor General was begging for information and the ministry was not providing. Why didn't the Ministry of Finance produce the relevant financial records and supporting documentary evidence of the claims they were trying to make of a multi-billion-dollar increase in revenue? Strike 5. Had the ministry simply provided the supporting documents they used to claim that they had justified $2.599 billion, or better yet, the $3.4 billion they initially claimed was the true figure of the error, then this matter would have finished right there.
Long time.
Instead,
Justify
it appears that Imbert's ministry either refused to supply the supporting evidence they requested, or simply did
heavy
not
weather,
have
make believe.
any. Instead,
making plenty noise.
Instead, ladies and gentlemen, they rushed to spend God knows how much money to hire a senior counsel and a senior junior counsel to help write a pre-action protocol letter to send to the Auditor General. You cannot make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. This is the way that this government, this Minister of Finance, and this Attorney General is running this country.
Focus,
ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, the law established practice. The law and established practice require the Ministry of Finance to provide statements and supporting reports to justify the statements of revenue and expenditure of public funds. Once more, it has not been disputed that no supporting evidence accompanied the several memos asking and expecting of the Auditor General to change figures. Strike 6. If nothing else, that is what the Minister of Finance and his sidekick, the Attorney General, should be investigating. If nothing else, why documentary evidence to support the various claims of the various figures were not supplied to the Auditor General, either when the initial request was made or when the auditor sent a team to the ministry to verify the claims that were being made? Amazingly, Imbert and Amor seems to have expected the Auditor General to conduct a professional audit by memo. They wanted her to change the numbers, increase the numbers by $3.4 billion or $2.6 billion, depending on when you look at which one of the correspondents from the ministry, depending on which one. They wanted her to do that without a single table, a single report of supporting evidence. The question, ladies and gentlemen, that we must ask, ladies and gentlemen, is where is the supporting documentation? And it's here on your screen. Where is the supporting documentation with regards to the revenue figure to the value of $780,499,791.27? Where is that documentation? Why is it that the ministry cannot reconcile that figure? How do they know such a specific figure exists? And they still cannot provide any evidence of that. Not that they have provided to date, from my understanding and my knowledge, not that they have provided any explanation for any of the claims of increased revenue that they have made. Now, members of the public may have been distracted by the government's propaganda in the attack on the integrity of the Auditor General. But what we need to focus on is the integrity of a government which made a claim of $3.4 billion in revenue and 3 months after cannot substantiate it with any evidence. Why? Worse, Minister Imbert's ministry openly admits that they cannot account for more than $780 million in revenue they claim to receive. Strike 7. Where has that money mysteriously gone? Was this money ever received in the first place? All this song and dance and bullying and pre-action, and yet no supporting documents. All this venom and spite from Imbert and Amor, and the fact is that they did not do their job. To put this in context, ladies and gentlemen, $780 million could have fixed every road in this country. It could have improved the water supply so citizens in this country today wouldn't have to beg WASA for a truck-bound supply every 2 or 3 months because there's no water in their taps. It could have provided life-saving surgery for every single man, woman, and child needed it. It could have provided enough funding for the judiciary to ensure that the relevant infrastructure and resources were in place so that victims of crime could get justice on time. It could have funded the boosting of the number of police officers with enough vehicles, bulletproof vests, technology to make a substantial dent in crime. This missing money could have funded the clearing of watercourses, the construction of river banks and retention ponds, so that my constituency and so many others would not have had to experience the kind of flooding that we know is going to come. It could have prevented the government from having to borrow billions and billions and billions, indebting future generations with the highest level of international, intergenerational debt ever in this country. Strike 8. The failure and or inability of this government to account for billions of dollars in revenue that they said they received is a frightening situation, and not a soul has been held accountable because the minister has successfully managed to focus attention on the Auditor General, whose only fault is that she asks for information to support, as she is entitled to, the claims made by the Minister of Finance that $3.4 billion or $2.6 billion, whichever figure that they choose to talk about at this point. That's her only feeling. And that's what the Ministry of Finance wants you to focus on, when in fact, they have failed to support any claim of any increased revenue to date, ladies and gentlemen. But the Auditor General also stated that Imbert's ministry did not provide documentation to support known expenditure of $1 billion.
What?
So government spent $1 billion and have not accounted for that either. What was this money spent on, ladies and gentlemen?
Wow.
Why is there no paper trail? Now, having worked in government before, I am aware of the very detailed procedures required before approval is provided for expenditure. How then was the executive able to spend $1 billion more? $1 billion. And not be able to justify, to provide any documentation to support their claim. I call on the Ministry of Finance today to provide details to the public of exactly which ministry or ministries this expenditure relates to and what action has been taken to hold irrelevant ministers and officials accountable. We must not, ladies and gentlemen, simply close our collective eyes to the inability of the government to account for such a massive sum, which is more than the entire allocation of several ministries. We will not and we must not allow this minister and his government to refuse to account for billions in missing revenue and expenditure. And he must provide those answers before he comes in the media review to ask you, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, for more money. Again, this $1 billion, this is not the $5 you spent to buy some tenement and it's receipting. This is $1 billion. Minister, you must account for what you got and spent before you shamelessly come demanding more. There's another issue, ladies and gentlemen. It's related. I have reviewed the relevant legislation myself, and the motion brought to the Parliament by the Minister of Finance and passed in the House of Representatives on April 26th and in the Senate on April 29th, 2024. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2023 was submitted on the 24th of April 2024 to the Minister of Finance, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the Senate in full compliance with the constitutional requirement. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the report is validly submitted within the deadline, and the next step is to have it laid in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and available to members of the public and the Public Accounts Committee, which I chair, in keeping with the Exchequer and Audit Act and in the Constitution. Section 25(3) of the Exchequer Act, ladies and gentlemen, plainly says, the minister shall lay the report of the Auditor General on the table of the Parliament within 30 days of its receipt by him, or, if Parliament is not sitting, within 30 days after the commencement of the next sitting.
That's correct.
It is now recorded history that despite the presence of the 2023 report of the Auditor General being listed on the supplemental order paper to be laid on Friday, April 26, 2024, in accordance with the law, for the first time in our nation's history, the reports present in the House, duly laid to the hands of the Speaker, duly placed in the hands and submitted in the hands of the Speaker, the President of the Senate, and the Minister. It's the first time ever that those documents were not laid. What a total disrespect for the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the procedures that govern our democracy. What a total disrespect for the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Instead, the minister
Not
sought to
surprising, not
retroactively extend the
surprising.
deadline for submission of information by 4 months, despite the fact, so this was coming retroactively, despite the fact that the deadline for submission had already been passed by 2 months. And he sought to also extend the period of time for the Auditor General by 11 months, both for the purpose of the financial accounts for 2023. To be clear, the minister has under the authority of law to extend the time frame to anything he wants. That is not in dispute. What is of concern is whether this motion contains some provision which effectively scraps and renders irrelevant the current submitted reports by the Auditor General for 2023, which were submitted in due process of law and intent. I encourage citizens to read the motion on the supplemental audit paper and see for yourselves. I also call on the Minister of Finance to explain why he did not seek to extend the 2 time frames before the deadline for the submission, before the actual submission. He had 2 months. Why did he not extend the deadline, extend the time frames for submission? If he was so concerned about including any documents or revising any figures, he had, ladies and gentlemen, 2 months based on the reports in the public domain from the Ministry of Finance and from the Auditor General herself. It seems common sense to facilitate the additional time that they claimed that they would enable reconciliation if the additional 3.4 or 2.5 or 2.6 or whatever the new figure that the minister could come up with of undeclared revenue was collected, and to locate the justification for the 1 billion in expenditure that they simply cannot seem to justify. Instead, the minister sat on his hands, expecting that the bullying by the AG would have forced the Auditor General to breach of constitutional duties and professional code of conduct. Nonetheless, for me, the motion is on clear reading, does not contain any clear provision which facilitates the ministers not laying of the reports. Parliament, Trinidad and Tobago would have seen the ministers sitting cockily, grinning, when the Speaker of the House stood up and called on the minister in accordance with law to lay the 2 reports of the Auditor General. Nothing. The minister said not a word. Not a word. What a shameless, coward act. Today, I use this platform to call on the Minister of Finance, Colin, to lay the report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the public accounts for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ended September 30th, 2023, and the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2023 within the statutory deadline assigned by the Exchequer and Audit Act, which still is relevant. Minister, by that act you shall, and in law that is compulsory, by that act you shall lay the report within 30 days of receipt, as I cited the law earlier. And as such, ladies and gentlemen, I call on Minister Imbert, having received the reports on April 24th, 2024, to lay those reports in accordance with the law by the 23rd of this month, May 2024. Failure to do so will be a breach in law. And may I further remind you, Minister, that you are not above the law, and therefore you shall lay the report. Strike 9. Should the Minister of Finance fail to lay the reports in time, the standing orders of the House.
It is clear, of course, that there's preparations being made to go to court because, of course, Imbert had a particular specific time period to lay the report in the Parliament. The Speaker, wise, of course, would have had a copy, the President, but it was not their prerogative, nor the onus was not on them. It was on the Minister. The Minister glibly stood there when he was called upon, and according to the Speaker, she said that the Minister didn't move, so there's nothing she could do. Let's move on. I think this is a matter for our constitutional court to decide upon, and our apex court, if necessary, are talking about the Privy Council. Rowley must not get away with this. Imbert must not get away with this. They are too criminal in their glib and the dismissive manner in which they treat public funds. We saw it with the purchase of boats. We saw it with the purchase of other items in relation, of course, to contracts. The 400 million highway to nowhere, the so-called Manzanilla Highway. We also saw where his good friend, and now is before the court for a sexual offense, are talking about, of course, the head of NH International, Hadid, yes. Before the courts on sexual offense, and spent over $200 million to purchase, of course, Massey Communications. The friend I'm talking about is Elias, not Hadid, Elias, who Rowley says funded his campaign when he wanted to come up against, of course, Manning, when he tried to oust Manning prematurely.
House and the Exchequer and Audit Act at Clause 25 and the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago all provide for the circumstances within which the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate shall, that word again, compulsory, shall cause the reports to be laid and thereafter forwarded to the Public Accounts Committee for its query. The country will look...
Understand what he's saying there? He's saying that both the Speaker and the President had an obligation under law to lay the document. In other words, if Imber didn't want to, we're going to look at that. It has to be ventilated in the courts, and we'll see, because the law has been specific, and that is our funds, the country's money we're talking about. And the onus was on Imbert and them to provide the correct information, because the Auditor General can't work without the Ministry of Finance providing the information. So any concern about the contents of such a document, only the Ministry of Finance has themselves to blame. They have themselves to blame, nobody else, because they provided the information from which, of course, the Auditor General just had, of course, to reconcile and assess and evaluate and analyze monies spent. For example, these are the receipts. These are the receipts for what was spent and the items on which they were spent. Very simple. But no, it's con men. They can't tell you which one the money is. Look at Balize House. I can give you a fair idea as to where it is. Look at Balize House. Look at Balize House.
Forward with great interest to see if these high office holders will ensure that the relevant laws are upheld. I am confident that good sense will prevail. The country awaits. So this fiasco between the Minister of Finance and his sidekick, the Auditor General, this fiasco between the Minister of Finance and his Attorney General, his sidekick, against the Auditor General has tremendous importance in our country as it relates to transparency, accountability, and the attempts by the government to subvert the integrity of the Auditor General. The job of the Auditor General is not to rubber stamp the demands of Imbert and his gang. Her job is not to close her eyes and just change figures because Imbert woke up one morning and decided that he didn't like the figures. What is scary is this is the same Minister of Finance that has been boasting that the country is doing well. So well, ladies and gentlemen. He has been boasting that the country is doing well. He has, ladies and gentlemen, submitted to the international lending agencies figures and numbers on the basis of which they have now, the international lending agencies, the international rating agencies, have received documentation and information from this Minister of Finance, which shows, according to their view, according to their view, based on the analysis of these documents, that the country is doing well. But what happens, as has happened now, when the minister cannot provide justification for his numbers? What are those agencies saying today? What are those agencies saying today about the documentation that have been supplied to them? I call on the Minister of Finance today as well from this platform to share with Trinidad and Tobago what information he has provided to those international agencies, to Moody's, to Standard & Poor's, to the IMF, what documentation he has shown to them so that they can come to the conclusion, like the minister has, that things are going so well. In fact, every single citizen of this country, except the friends, family, and financiers of the PNM, know that this country is in financial, social, and economic crisis. I know that Amor has claimed that he recommended senior counsel and junior senior counsel to advise the Minister of Finance in his misdirected attempts to force the Auditor General's hand as well. I call on Amor today to provide the names of those persons recommended, how he selected them, and the role that they have played in this ugly fiasco so far. I call on the Minister of Finance as well to tell this country how much has been paid to date and for what, and what is the anticipated total cost of this frivolous excursion of it. The country deserves answers, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, you would have noted that I have stayed away from the comments about the contents of the Auditor General's report. A lot of that is already in the public domain. But from what I have seen in the very same public domain, this multi-billion-dollar revenue and expenditure scandal is not the only issue. But it is certainly clear that this may have been one of the intentions of the minister in trying to remove the reports from public scrutiny. If nothing else, what this experience shows, ladies and gentlemen, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that this government cannot be trusted to do the right thing. Worse, they are willing to undermine independent institutions, engage in character assassination and PM smoke and mirror tricks to cover up their transgressions. They are willing to bring Parliament into disrepute by hiding behind parliamentary privilege. They are willing to breach the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. But the bright light of justice and the clear light of the rising sun will bring this government's misdemeanor, corruption, and skullduggery to light. Pay attention, Trinidad and Tobago. You may not understand all the intricacies of the Auditor General's report, but please pay attention to the discussions. This is not merely an accounting error. This is a full-scale attack on an office and an individual for doing the right thing in the best interest of you, the people. Not only can you not trust this government with your lives and the safety of your children, it is obvious now that you cannot trust this government with your money. The UNC, I give you this assurance as I close, ladies and gentlemen, that the UNC will not be intimidated or distracted. We will continue to hold this government to account. On this occasion, the Minister of Finance needs to stop running, stop burying, stop hiding, and start providing true answers about the billions of taxpayers' dollars which remain unaccountable to date, ladies and gentlemen. Pay attention, Trinidad and Tobago. Pay attention. This fiasco is not yet done. Ladies and gentlemen, this latest attack by this Rowley PNM against the Auditor General is just a continuation and perhaps an extension of a pattern of behavior by this government to undermine, infiltrate, and control our independent institutions.
Yes, indeed. Well, people, of course, we have come to the end. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock, our closing time. And I trusted that that comprehensive analysis would do well. And I trusted that you would have not only keep this record this particular night's live, but keep it close by so that you can make reference to it as frequently as possible because it has all the details. And of course, I expect that legal fireworks are going to emanate from this having regard to what Dave Tanku would have said in the closing part of that presentation, where any one of the other officers could have presented that, the president of the Senate and that of the speaker. So even if they call on Imbert and he refused, that person, we wait and see. It is yet to be, of course, ventilated in the court, but that is what I glean from it. And I see no reason why, because the law is specific about the treatment of our money. It cannot be glibly and loosely and willy-nilly and helter-skelter and, of course, nonchalant, as how Imbert is attempting to make it look, and the government, as they have done with other serious institutions in this country, they have emasculated and, of course, have subverted and render, of course, insignificant for them. But for us, a serious matter. Serious matters. And therefore, we expect that at the end of the day, all of them will have to account, or who have, of course, been involved in this fiasco as far as the Auditor General is concerned. And let me conclude by saying, not only you, the people, must decide ultimately on your own future away from these vipers, but on Thursday, we have, of course, a date with destiny, where we're going to assemble on the Bandara Promenade opposite to the Express House, and in defense of, and in promotion of, and in solidarity with the Auditor General and the institution that she, of course, is at the helm of, and is independent according to the Constitution. We must stop Rowley and they from breaching the Constitution of the country and, in other words, breaking the law. And therefore, we must gather there at 1 o'clock on Thursday, 1 o'clock, yes, where we deliver a letter to her in solidarity with her stance, and to tell the government, haul your ass, because your ass is grass. Yes, indeed. Get the hell out of office. Now, people, we have come to the end. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And certainly don't forget that tomorrow morning at the ground report, will be, of course, on from 6. Andy, Mikey, and myself. See you then. Have a wonderful rest of the night. And, of course, we will, because of our love for Trinidad and Tobago, we'll conclude with this piece of music. Yes, indeed.
Premier.
You know
love to me. Yeah, you, my heart's desire. Your lips caress me, your body possess me, and I'd keep you if I could.
Natural beauty, you know. Yeah. No, I never been someone shy until I seen your eyes. Still I had to try. Yeah. Oh yes. Let me get my words right and then approach you. Woman, I'll treat you like a man is supposed to. You'll never have to cry. No. I know everyone can relate to when they find a special someone. And she's royal, yeah, so royal. And I want her in my life.
No word of a lie. Oh, did you ever say thank you for all the things that I've shown you? No, still I stood by you. Has it occurred to you lately how I'm feeling, my baby? No, still I stand by you. Yeah, you. Yet there is one thing I need you to know about the small matter what you neglect to show. Show me that you love me. Yeah, 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 yeah. Show me that you care, so we can be blessed now, minus the stress now. Yeah, did I render you lonely? Was I your one and only? No, still I stood by you.